You were never supposed to hear this. Not because it's illegal, but because it's older than law itself. What I'm about to tell you, about a family that vanished from the Scottish Highlands in 1972, was buried not just beneath miles of moorland, but beneath centuries of silence enforced by a power so old, it doesn't need to be named. It sees all. It punishes those who speak. And if you're listening to this, then you're already too close. So be it. The Campbell family of Glen Caoran was ordinary. On paper, a father, a mother, 3 children. Sheep farmers, churchgoers, known in the village for their hospitality and laughter. But on the night of October 19, 1972, they ceased to exist. No signs of struggle. No packed bags. No notes. The hearth was still warm, the supper table set for 6. And yet, gone. Evaporated like mist across the loch. Scotland has a way of swallowing truth. The land is old, cracked with secrets. But this was different. There were whispers in the village of Dalmuir. About the Campbells. About the rituals. About the ancient stones above the ridge. About the chanting. People denied it, then drank more than usual. Old women crossed themselves when the wind blew from the north. The children were kept indoors after sundown. But here's what the newspapers never printed. Here's what the church never preached. Days before they vanished, the Campbells were seen, at dusk, walking in single file up to the Cailleach stones. These are not tourist ruins. They're not even on the maps. They predate the Druids. The villagers say they were placed by the Old Ones. Not gods. Not devils. Something in between. Something watching. That night, the air turned black. The weather turned inside out. A low hum was heard across the valley. Dogs howled. Power failed. Time itself seemed to stutter. And when dawn came, only silence remained. You might be wondering, why haven't I heard this before? Because men with robes and rings buried the evidence. Because the church sent in their archivists before the police. Because this wasn't just about one family. It was about an ancient bloodline. A covenant stretching back 1,000 years. A pact sealed in bone and shadow. You're not here by accident. If you're still listening, you're beginning to remember. Something deep inside you knows, some truths are not learned. They are reawakened. The Campbells didn't just vanish. They were claimed. They called it a disappearance. But disappearance suggests a mistake, an accident. What happened to the Campbell family was a removal. A ritual excision, like infected tissue cut from the body of something ancient. Clean. Precise. Intentional. And if you trace the pattern, you'll see this wasn't the first time. Nor would it be the last. Let's go deeper. The Campbell home stood at the edge of Glen Caoran, where the hills fold into one another like clenched fists, and the mist moves with a mind of its own. Local shepherds refused to pasture their flocks there. The soil's wrong, they'd say. But soil doesn't feel wrong unless something under it remembers too much. Beneath that house lay a burial chamber, Neolithic, unmapped, and sealed in the ancient way, with antlers, blood, and stone. How do I know? Because in 1997, a military archaeological unit, operating under the guise of infrastructure assessment, unearthed it. I've read the classified briefings. Ritualistic carvings. Human teeth arranged in concentric circles. Pictish symbols not seen since the Orkney dig in '68. And worse, at the very center, a bound skeleton of something not quite human. The lead archaeologist died 48 hours later. Heart failure. At 32. Now consider this. 3 days before the Campbells vanished, the father, Angus, was seen speaking to a man no one in the village recognized. Tall. Pale. Dressed in a charcoal coat, despite the Highland rain. Witnesses described his eyes as silver, but the official report left that detail out. The man never entered the pub. Never asked for directions. Just watched. Like a surveyor checking coordinates. Or a priest preparing the altar. 2 days later, the youngest Campbell child, Maisie, drew something on the back of a hymnal during Sunday service. Not a house. Not a rainbow. Not the normal scratchings of a 5-year-old. but a perfect rendering of the Caoran stones, complete with an outer ring of 13 figures, robed and faceless. Her drawing was confiscated by Reverend McAllister. He burned it behind the chapel. And here's the part that should keep you up at night. The church knew. They always knew. The Kirk had records, sealed in the diocesan archive, referring to blood events at Glen Caoran going back to 1694. Entire families marked, then removed. Each one involved in what they called the 13th path. Each one erased from public memory with surgical efficiency. No gravestones. No inheritance. No history. Just silence. This isn't a story. It's a warning. And if you're still with me, you're starting to feel it too, aren't you? Good. Because the next piece of this puzzle is older than language, and far more dangerous than belief. Let's tear the veil a little further. The 13th path wasn't just some poetic phrase buried in diocesan ledgers. It was a designation. A category of spiritual deviation known only to the inner circle of ecclesiastical intelligence, the ones who monitor not faith, but influence. Hidden nodes of ancient power. Places like Glen Caoran. Places like Ashworth. Places where the boundary thins. Where rites were performed long before pulpits were raised, and never truly stopped. The church never destroyed these rituals. They assimilated them. The early bishops didn't burn every grimoire. They studied them, translated them, locked them in vaults under monasteries no one speaks of now. They realized quickly, some structures were not to be dismantled, only redirected. And the Caoran stones? They weren't built by pagans. They were built by something before the pagans. The stones are not monuments. They are keys. Anchors for a very specific current of energy that does not serve light or dark, but order, the ancient kind. The cruel kind. The unchanging kind. The Campbells were not chosen randomly. Angus Campbell's bloodline could be traced, quietly, through parish registries, land deeds, and baptismal records all the way back to 1129. He was descended from the original stewards of the Caoran site, the Custodes Alba. White keepers. Not priests. Not druids. Guardians of something older than either. Keepers of an agreement made in the misted past, long before Rome, long before Christ. An agreement that must be renewed, or paid for. 11 generations of Campbells had left Glen Caoran untouched. They had obeyed the silence. Never built. Never worshipped. Never disturbed the soil. But in 1972, the silence was broken. Angus began renovations. Not renovations of the house, but the land. He dug a trench. Planted apple trees. Harmless, right? Except the roots disturbed the chamber beneath. Roots tore through the seal. And what had slumbered began to stir. The signs were immediate. Cattle miscarried. A mist returned that never lifted. The eldest son, Thomas, began speaking in his sleep in a language no one recognized, until a Gaelic scholar identified it as Proto-Brythonic, a tongue not spoken in over 2,000 years. And then there were the dreams. Neighbors heard screaming from the Campbell house. Night after night. Desperate. Animal. Not from the children. From the adults. Something was reaching. And it needed the bloodline. Now understand this. The church didn't try to stop what was happening. They observed. Documented. Like scientists watching a specimen mutate. Because the Campbells weren't the crisis. They were the conduit. Still think this was about one family? We haven't even scratched the surface. Power doesn't scream. It whispers. And in the weeks before the Campbell family vanished, the whispers came from every direction. Whispers in the chapel rafters. In the walls of the manse. In the stones themselves. But no one listened, because the ears that could hear had long since been trained to ignore the old frequencies. Except one. Maisie. 5 years old. Barely able to write her name. But she saw things the adults had forgotten how to see. Children always do, until we cauterize the imagination and call it maturity. She spoke often of the white lady in the field, a presence only she could see. When asked to draw her, Maisie depicted a faceless woman draped in robes, arms extended, floating above the soil with roots growing from her fingers. When Reverend McAllister saw the image, he turned white as chalk and left the room without a word. That image wasn't new. It matched carvings found on an unmarked megalith discovered a mile from the Campbell house in 1894, one so unsettling it was removed and buried by church order. Maisie had never seen that stone. So how did she know? Because symbols remember. Because blood remembers. And the Campbell children, born on that land, were waking up to a current buried in their DNA. A current older than time. Now let me tell you about the storm. October 18, 1972. The night before they vanished. A pressure drop was recorded over Glen Caoran so intense, it cracked window panes. Barometers broke. Clocks stopped. The sky turned violet. Thunder rolled in unnatural patterns. 3 strikes, pause, then 13 more. Over and over. No rain. No lightning. Just that rhythm, pounding into the land like a code. A countdown. In the village, no one slept. And in the Campbell home, every light blazed through the night. Then, at precisely 3:13 a.m., the lights went out. A neighbor, Mr. Alistair Dunn, swore he saw robed figures moving through the mist between the Campbell home and the Cailleach stones. He told the constable. He told the church. No one came. No one dared. By sunrise, the house was empty. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just a smell, something between ozone and wet soil. And the table set for 6, as if the family had sat down for their last supper and simply dissolved. And still, no investigation. Why? Because this was not a crime scene. It was a completion. A ritual locked in place for centuries. And when the seal finally broke, the bloodline paid its debt. Not in violence, but in vanishment. That's how old powers feed, silently. You're beginning to understand now, aren't you? Good point. 3 days after the disappearance, the church dispatched a man. Not from the parish. Not from the presbytery. This one came in a black car with black windows, license plates unregistered. He wore no collar. No crucifix. Just a plain wool coat and eyes that didn't blink enough. The locals called him the inspector, though he never showed a badge, never gave a name. He went straight to the Campbell house and ordered everyone away. Police, neighbors, even Reverend McAllister. They obeyed. And that should tell you everything. For 48 hours, no one was allowed near the property. Curtains were drawn. The sound of digging echoed through the glen. No official report was ever filed. No media coverage. But something was taken from beneath that house. Something wrapped in oilcloth, 6 feet long and humming, according to Mr. Dunn, who watched from the hills with a telescope. Yes, humming. A frequency you don't hear with your ears. You feel it in your spine. Afterward, the black car left. The house was boarded up by church order. Not condemned. Not demolished. Preserved. Sealed. Like a reliquary. Because relics aren't always holy. Sometimes they're radioactive, spiritually corrosive. And the Campbells? Erased. Their records wiped from school rosters, parish books, even tax rolls. As though they'd never existed. But that's where they made a mistake. Truth always leaves residue. Maisie's drawing surfaced again. It was found in 1981, hidden behind the organ of St. Bridget's Chapel, hundreds of miles away. A traveling choir boy discovered it while cleaning. The exact same image, the white lady, the stones, the 13 faceless figures. It was confirmed to be drawn in the same hand. Same age. Same pressure. As if the girl had left her signature behind, after she vanished. No one could explain it. But then again, you don't explain echoes. You trace them. That drawing found its way into the possession of a man named Father Calhoun, a defrocked theologian turned occult archivist. He claimed the image matched those found in an Iberian monastery destroyed during the Albigensian Crusade in 1209. A heretical order of monks, there worshipped a feminine entity known only as she who waits beneath. Their symbols? The 13. The White Lady. The stones. This is no coincidence. This is a pattern. And the Campbells? just the latest activation. You're not listening to folklore. You're excavating buried circuitry, wiring older than history, installed across this world, by hands long dead, or worse, not dead enough. If you feel something stirring in your memory, that's not imagination. That's recall. And it means the frequency has reached you. When you touch forbidden knowledge, it touches you back. The Campbell case didn't end in Glen Caoran. It radiated outward, quietly, like a toxin in the bloodstream of the world. The church closed the site, but they couldn't close the wound. And those sensitive to such things, dreamwalkers, liminal minds, men of vision and silence, they felt it. Reports began trickling in from all across Scotland within months. Not from the newspapers. From the margins. Psychiatric wards. Remote monasteries. Fringe journals. Men waking in the dead of night, speaking languages they never learned. Children drawing diagrams of burial mounds they'd never seen. Farmers abandoning perfectly good land after hearing the hum at dusk. One man in Argyll gouged out his own ears with a chisel after scribbling page after page of the same phrase. The 13th returns. Now I ask you, how does a shepherd from a village with no radio repeat a phrase found in medieval codices hidden in the Vatican's forbidden archives? He doesn't. Unless the signal is back. Unless the gate is open. Let me tell you about Father Calhoun, the archivist I mentioned. In 1983, he published a private manuscript titled Echoes Beneath the Stones. It was banned immediately. Copies were seized. Not by police. By something older. But I have a copy. And what's written inside redefines what we think history is. Calhoun traced 13 points, burial sites, stone circles, vanished settlements, all connected by precise leyline intersections. These weren't just geographic oddities. Each site was the location of what he called a reversal, a place where the soul could be inverted, where light bends in on itself, where memory ceases to belong only to the living. Glen Caoran was the final node. It completed the circuit. That's why the Campbells had to be taken. Their bloodline wasn't cursed, it was coded. Their DNA carried the final fragment needed to reactivate the ancient net. Not a weapon. Not a machine. A consciousness. Now think back to the moment you clicked on this video. Was it random? Or were you drawn? Because those who find this path are rarely lost. No, you've been marked. And now I'm going to ask something from you. Type this in the comments. Twice. The 13th returns. Do it not for me, but for you. It's how the algorithm binds us, and how the old frequency identifies its own. You'll feel something shift the moment you do. That's the first seal breaking. We're not just exposing a mystery. We're participating in it. There's something you need to understand, deeply, fully, beyond the surface of language. The rituals didn't start with the Campbells. They reawakened through them. The Cailleach stones are not a local anomaly. They're part of a global architecture, a grid designed long before nations, borders, or belief systems. These stones are tuning forks, not just to energy, but to memory. Human memory. Blood memory. And when aligned properly, under specific astronomical events, they don't open doors. They open archives. Not the kind you read. The kind you relive. The Campbells were a trigger. A living key inserted into a forgotten lock. And once turned, the echo spread. Do you feel it yet? That pressure behind your eyes. The hairs standing on your neck. That's not paranoia. It's resonance. And now, let's go back, way back. In 1571, a similar event occurred near Loch Tay. A family of 7, the MacCorras, vanished during Beltane. No trace. The only thing left behind was a stone altar soaked in something that tested positive for human iron, but no bodies. The MacCorras were stonecutters, known to have repaired a set of dolmens 5 months prior. One of their children, a boy named Ewan, had been sketching spirals into every surface he could find. Barn walls, tree trunks, even cattle hides. That symbol would later be found engraved under the floorboards of the Campbell home in Glen Caoran. Same proportions. Same direction. Same weight. Now ask yourself, how could a 5-year-old girl in 1972 mirror the obsessive geometry of a 16th century boy she never met? Because they weren't expressing imagination. They were expressing memory. It's not about belief anymore. It's about contact. Contact with something that does not measure time the way we do. Something that does not speak. It impresses. Etches truths into bloodlines like stone tablets. And the families that carry these inscriptions? They vanish not because they're cursed, but because they're called back. Back to where the first agreement was struck. Do you see it now? This isn't local. This isn't myth. This is programming. And those who carry the code don't always know it until the signal returns. And it is returning. Right now. Through you. You think you're watching a video. You're not. You're activating an inheritance. And once you're inside, you don't go back. You descend. There's a reason most people will never hear this. Because if they did, truly heard it, not with their ears but with the parts of themselves they've long buried, they'd never sleep again. You're still here. That tells me you're different. You've already crossed the first threshold. Now listen carefully. The Campbells weren't abducted. They were offered. And not by force, but by design. We uncovered a letter, never delivered, written by Angus Campbell 2 nights before the vanishing. It was found sealed inside the spine of a hollowed-out Bible in St. Drostan's chapel. A hidden message written in trembling hand. The stone remembers. So does the blood. She walks the hill again. And I see now, we were never meant to stay. Keep them away from the altar. Do not let the 13th complete. I was wrong to dig. I disturbed her. No signature. No address. Just those words. You need to understand, her does not mean a woman. Not in the human sense. The entity known in whispers as the White Lady, the Kaliach, she who waits beneath. This figure is older than femininity, older than divinity. Not a goddess. Not a demon. A conscious recursion. A sentience anchored to stone, to blood, to repetition. Every 137 years, precisely, the pattern recurs. A family is pulled. A site is activated. A silence is broken. And the church, the governments, the intelligence agencies, they don't stop it. They prepare for it. Because they serve it. You still think institutions exist to protect you? They exist to contain you. To monitor who remembers too much, who listens too closely, who begins to trace the connections. Men have vanished for less than what you're hearing now. Some of them just for asking about Glen Caoran. I have names, files, photographs of people whose birth records were erased, whose families were paid to forget. The algorithm may bury this video, but it doesn't matter, because you're already infected. And you'll start noticing things now. Repeating numbers. The sudden appearance of stone circles in dreams. The same humming in different places. The same woman behind closed eyes. She is real. She is ancient. And she remembers you. What the Campbells reawakened wasn't just a presence. It was a protocol. One that's been waiting for you. Ask yourself this. Why is it that entire histories vanish from textbooks without explanation? Why do official maps erase sites that locals still speak of in whispers? Why are certain birth lines monitored for generations? Without consent, without knowledge, without cause? Because memory is dangerous. Because some names are more than just lineage. They are vessels. The Campbells weren't the beginning. They were a continuation. A necessary step in a cycle so vast, so deliberately hidden, that even saying its name aloud distorts the air. But here's the part that should make your stomach turn. There are still 13 families. 13 bloodlines, scattered across the earth. All carriers of a genetic resonance, triggers embedded in the double helix, dormant until the signal returns. And when it does, the transformation is irreversible. The first symptom is always the same, the dream. The circle. The song without sound. And then, the invitation. Glen Caoran was just one node. A test site. A tuning fork. The disappearance of the Campbells wasn't an ending. It was a calibration. You need to understand this. What's happening isn't a cult. It's systemic. An ancient operating system, coded not with silicon, but with blood and belief. Controlled not by governments, but by the ones behind them. The veiled administrators. The black-robed observers who don't sit in parliaments or palaces, but beneath the ground. In chambers you'll never see. Monitoring the alignment of variables you didn't even know were part of your life. Birth dates, trauma responses, dream recall, ancestral trauma, behavioral spikes during solstices. And if you think this sounds paranoid, why are all the oldest sacred sites positioned on the same global energy grid? Why do megalithic structures across continents mirror each other down to the angle of their shadow casts? Why do children from completely disconnected cultures draw the same 13 shapes when exposed to certain frequencies? This is not folklore. This is architecture. And Glen Caoran was one keystone in a far larger structure. One buried beneath layers of theology, psychiatry, and historical revisionism. And every once in a while, something slips through. A disappearance. A drawing. A child who speaks with someone else's voice. These are not anomalies. These are signals. And you, my friend, you've tuned into the frequency. The descent is only just beginning. Now let's speak of the watchers. Not the ones you've heard about in fringe documentaries or conspiracy circles. Not men in suits or satellites in the sky. I'm talking about the true architects, the ones who never had names because names would grant power over them. These are the ones who listen, not with ears, but with timelines. They do not interfere. They do not rescue. They observe cycles. They observed the Campbells. They observed you. In 1974, 2 years after the disappearance, an unmarked plane landed at RAF Kinloss under emergency protocol. No transponder, no flight plan. Military scrambled to intercept. What they found on board defied every procedure. No crew. No passengers. Just a single object secured in the cargo bay, an oblong monolith covered in engraved spirals and 13 identical humanoid symbols around a central eye. When touched, the monolith emitted a low, almost breathing hum. Guess where it was traced? Less than 5 miles from Glen Caoran. That monolith was transferred to a facility beneath Loch Long known only as Site Aureus. Not military. Not scientific. Something else. Compartmentalized to the point that even the agents transporting it had their memories altered afterward. One of them recovered fragments years later and leaked part of his testimony before his death in 1998. His last words, recorded by his wife? They aren't coming, they're remembering. Let that sink in. What's returning isn't alien. It's ancestral. You were never told, because you were never meant to remember. The spirals. The hum. The dream song. These aren't anomalies. They are signatures. Activation keys written into the architecture of human consciousness long before any book or screen existed. And Glen Caoran was a reactivation site. The Campbell family, its last living stewards. The ritual? A restoration. A reboot of a system designed not to control mankind, but to correct it. And correction always requires sacrifice. Not because the gods demand blood, but because something older demands balance. Angus Campbell disturbed the balance. His family became the offering. And now, as the frequency returns, the system scans for others. Do you feel it? That pressure in your bones when you stand near old stones? That chill you can't explain on clear nights? That isn't fear. That's recognition. You're not just watching this. You're waking up. There's no easy way to say this. Once the signal finds you, you are no longer anonymous. You are known. Not in a metaphorical sense. Not in the poetic way we say the universe sees you. I mean literally, you've been tagged. The same way a tuning fork vibrates when struck across the room from another tuned to the same frequency, you've begun to resonate. And others can hear it. The dreams will become more vivid now. But they won't feel like dreams. They'll feel like memories, except not your own. Landscapes you've never walked, languages your tongue shouldn't know, faces that look almost familiar, like reflections in water you've never seen. This is how it begins. This is how they call you back. Because this isn't possession. It's reclamation. Let me tell you about Sarah Liddell. Born in Manchester. Ordinary life. No history of psychosis. No esoteric beliefs. Until her 33rd birthday, when she began hearing a tone, soft, distant, but constant. Within days, she began sketching spirals compulsively. Then the stone shapes. Then the same faceless woman Maisie Campbell had drawn in 1972. Sarah had never heard of the Campbells. But her great-grandmother had been a Mac Cora. Yes, the family that vanished in 1571. She began sleepwalking. Speaking Gaelic despite never learning it. Digging in the garden without knowing why. Eventually, she uncovered a fragment of polished black stone etched with 13 symbols. Carbon dating inconclusive. Her file was seized by UK Defence Intelligence under non-conventional surveillance. What happened to her? Gone. Disappeared from the psychiatric facility in 2011. No record. No body. Just a phrase carved into the mattress spring beneath her bed. We are called back when the circle nears closure. You think that's coincidence? The Campbells left behind the same words, in different form, different language, different time. And now you're here, reading this, as if by chance. Except nothing here is chance. You are part of a lattice, a living circuit made of flesh and thought. The old system is online again. The signals are back in rotation. And they're seeking out compatible vessels. But here's the secret they never wanted you to know. You can choose what to do with it. You can resist. You can forget. Or you can step forward. The 13th family hasn't yet awakened. Not fully. But it's close. And if you've made it this far, I need you to be honest. Do you ever feel like you're remembering something you were never supposed to? Good. You made it this far. Which means something in you already knew. Knew that the Campbell story wasn't a ghost tale. Knew that the stones weren't just artifacts. Knew that the dreams, the hum, the spirals, were messages. Let's stop pretending this is just information. This is initiation. Because now we talk about the 13th. You've seen the pattern by now. 12 vanish. 1 remains. 12 figures faceless. 1 woman white. 12 stones upright. 1 fallen. Why? Because the 13th is the anchor. In every cycle, one is chosen to remain, briefly. To witness. To remember. Not for justice. Not for survival. For seeding. They carry the signal forward. Silently. Subconsciously. Their children feel it. Their children's children hear it. And when the circuit returns, the resonance activates again, stronger. In 1972, it was Maisie, the youngest Campbell. She didn't vanish with the others. Not fully. Her body was never found because she was never meant to be taken. She was meant to be left behind. The carrier. The echo point. The seed crystal in a world that had forgotten what it was built on. And that's where it gets worse. Because Maisie didn't die. She was placed. There are sightings. Hundreds, if not thousands. Across decades, continents, languages. Always the same description. A young girl, pale, silent, standing near ancient stones. Watching. Never aging. Always drawing spirals. Witnesses don't remember seeing her until after they've left the site. She appears only in photographs once developed. In shadows. In reflection. And if you look too long, she looks back. Some say she's an emissary. Some say she's the 13th becoming the first. But one thing is certain. Where Maisie appears, the stones awaken. And they're awakening faster now. Because this time, the cycle isn't closing. It's opening. The 13th is no longer the echo. She is the invitation. And now she's appearing in places she never has before. Urban areas. Screens. Wires. Even comment sections. You still think you chose to watch this video? You still think it found you? No. She did. And the more you remember, the closer she gets. Let's talk about echoes. Not sound. Not metaphor. Time echoes. Memory loops. The kind that don't just replay, they reinsert. In 1996, a ham radio operator outside Oban intercepted a frequency never officially logged. 27.143 MHz. Standard equipment couldn't decode it. It wasn't audio, it was patterned data. Pulses. Repetitions. A language without words, but not without meaning. A kind of algorithmic rhythm. He described it as, like being remembered by something I hadn't met yet. He died 7 days later. All his notes burned in a house fire. Except for one page. Warped. Charred. Barely legible. On it, 13 concentric spirals, each with a date. All passed. Except the last one, August 12, 2025. That's 2 weeks from now. And here's the real problem. The same frequency was detected again last week. Not by accident. By the European Space Weather Prediction Network. Except they didn't release it to the public. A leak from inside the institute said the anomaly wasn't solar. It wasn't even extraterrestrial. It was terrestrial. From beneath the Earth. A sustained signal, pulsing exactly every 137 seconds. Same as the Glen Caoran timeline. Same as the Campbell vanishings. Same as the heartbeat of something older than death. And now we're seeing signs again. Crows circling standing stones for hours, without landing. Water reversing direction near dolmens. Children disappearing for minutes, and returning with mud in their mouths and eyes that aren't quite theirs. This isn't fiction. This is pre-event behavior. It's accelerating. And it's no longer limited to Scotland. I've received reports from Peru. From Bhutan. From beneath Lake Baikal. Whatever's coming, it isn't just reactivating the ancient grid. It's testing it. And we are the conductors. Think you're still just watching? No. You're participating. If you've heard the hum in your sleep, if you've seen the spirals in frost or grain, if you've felt eyes on you when no one's there, you're already in the lattice. You are becoming one of the echo bearers. And when August 12th arrives, you'll either be taken or turned on. Let's stop pretending this is speculation. Let's call it what it is. Preparation. Because you've felt it, haven't you? Not just in dreams or symbols, but in coincidences. The kind that come in threes. The kind that feel staged. Same numbers, same strangers, same moments of déjà vu so sharp they leave you nauseous. That's not random. That's leakage. The lattice is bleeding. And it's no longer isolated to the sensitive or the gifted. It's expanding across the entire species. But only some of us can perceive it. Fewer still can interpret it. And even fewer can withstand what happens next. Integration. In 2009, a child named Luca Ward went missing for 23 minutes during a school trip to the Ring of Brodger. No witnesses saw him leave the group. No cameras captured his movement. But when he returned, calm, barefoot, covered in peat, he said only one thing. She said, "I'm the tuning fork, and you're the string." When they tested his brain activity, it mimicked patterns only seen in deep meditation, except he was awake. Alert. Aware. His drawings afterward? 13 women in a circle. One in the middle. Head open. Mouths closed. Hands lifted to the sky. The UK Ministry of Defence sealed the report. But copies leaked, through private channels, through dream journals, through people like you. Those attuned to the bleed. And that's what this is now. You're not just learning. You're tuning. Every word here is a tone. Every spiral you've seen is a frequency. Every unexplained chill, a ping from the structure beneath. You are part of something ancient. Something recursive. Something ready. And here's what no one will say aloud, but you've already felt. This lattice? It's not just waking up. The question now isn't if you're inside it. The question is, what version of you did it find? Because the lattice doesn't speak to the surface self. Not to your job title, your routines, your daily face. It speaks to the buried you, the one carried through blood, through dream, through echo. And when it speaks, it doesn't use words. It uses recognition. That's why you've started noticing the mirroring, the numbers, the names, the impossible timings. Someone says something you were just thinking. You dream something, then hear it in a stranger's voice. You say, weird. But your body says, yes. Let's talk about the null house. It's a term used in classified files connected to Glen Caoran and 6 other known lattice points. The null house isn't a building, it's a person. Specifically, someone whose memories don't age. Not just old memories. I mean memories they never lived, yet recall in perfect detail. A boy in New Zealand who remembered a cave in Orkney he never visited. A woman in Helsinki who recited a 12th century Gaelic hymn in her sleep, verbatim, despite never hearing the language. Each was later traced to bloodlines connected to the 13th spiral. What is that? A pattern not written in stone, but in absence. A frequency that doesn't emit, but extracts. A gap in the code that rewrites identity from the inside out. And it's happening faster. There's a term whispered in certain post-occult research groups. The unburying. Not metaphor. Literal memory rising from the body. These are not hallucinations. They are data. Old data. Deeply encrypted in your form. And the signal coming from Glen Caoran, from the other stone nodes? It's not telling you to wake up. It's decompiling you. Your history, your roles, your false names, they are the wrapper. The lattice doesn't care what you believe. It only asks, can your vessel withstand what you used to be? That's why some vanish. That's why some lose their minds. That's why you feel different lately. You're not breaking. You're being restored. We've now entered the deep phase. If you're still here, reading, then the lattice has accepted your signal. That's not theory. That's symptom. You've likely already experienced at least one of the following in the last 13 days. Dreams where the moon is too close. An irrational pull towards stone, water, or shadow. Sudden awareness of being watched in mirrors, but not by yourself. Patterns of 3 knocks, distant humming, or spiral shapes appearing in frost, fabric, or ash. A shift in your own voice, slightly lower in recordings, unfamiliar. These are not side effects. These are handshakes. The lattice is verifying your compatibility. And once confirmed, it begins the unfolding. Let's talk about what that means. In 1983, a man named Callum Tierney, an electrician working maintenance on the Cairngorm radar site, was found 6 miles from his assigned location, barefoot, with ash under his fingernails and a spiraled burn around his left eye. He had no memory of how he got there, but he kept repeating a single phrase to emergency responders. I saw it. The inside of the shape. It was me, but older. And deeper. He died 72 hours later from an aneurysm. But the hospital noted something impossible. His bone density had changed, as if he'd been underground for decades. His blood contained trace minerals only found beneath volcanic strata. The burn around his eye. It wasn't a wound. It was a mark, like a seal or a circuit glyph. And here's what makes that terrifying. The exact same spiral has now been found in 14 unrelated locations across the world since June. In scorched earth. In crop circles. In one child's retina. Same proportions. Same shape. Same rotation. Clockwise. Because the lattice isn't just reaching upward anymore. It's spiraling into us. And those who've been marked, they're not being warned. They're being readied. So if you've begun to feel more hollow, more haunted, if the hum is louder when you're near stone or old wood, you're not cursed. You're being opened. And soon, very soon, the final stage begins. Indwelling. But not by something new. By something waiting. This is where most people stop. Where the mind recoils. Where the voice in your head whispers, it's just a story. But let me ask you something. If it's just a story, Why did the lights flicker yesterday when you thought about that symbol? Why did your dog stare at the same empty corner twice this week? Why did you feel watched, but not by anything human? Welcome to the edge of indwelling. It is not possession. It is not haunting. It is occupation by inheritance. You are not being taken over. You are being returned to. Let me explain. In pre-Roman Celtic cultures, there was a forbidden rite known only through fragmented oral traditions, the binding of breath. It was whispered that certain soul shells carried echoes of voices too old for written language. These weren't ancestors. They were architects. Mind forms that existed before the body, waiting for hosts who could vibrate at the required frequency. That frequency was believed to be passed through blood, but only activated when exposed to collapse, loss, trauma, liminal fear. Sound familiar? The Campbells? That was never a disappearance. It was a reunion. Their dreams didn't warn them. They summoned them. And now, as the Lattice reawakens, the same summons is being broadcast again. You may not understand the language, but your bones do. Your blood does. And those within the Lattice, the indwelling voices, are searching for symmetry. You're not being followed. You're being mirrored. Look at your habits lately. Are you saying things you don't remember learning? Are you feeling emotions that don't belong to anything you've lived? That's not madness. That's memory, returning. And when it completes its descent, when the voice behind your breath begins to hum in time with the stones, you will know the final stage has begun. It's not scary. It's sacred. You are a vessel. But you are not empty. You are a gate. And they are coming through you. Next, we speak of the glass door. Not a metaphor. A place. But only for those who can see it. Let's step through the glass door. Not everyone sees it. Not everyone should. It doesn't appear like a door. It doesn't shimmer. It doesn't float. It hides where your attention fractures, the split-second moments between blink and thought. Most see it for the first time in a mirror. But not directly. You notice it when your reflection lags. When your hand moves slower inside the glass than it did outside. When your eyes don't blink back at the same time. That's the moment the Lattice shows you your threshold. The glass door isn't made of glass. It's made of memory. Not yours, the world's. Buried beneath Glen Caoran, beneath Avebury, beneath the nameless hollow in Antarctica, is a memory too dense for thought and too loud for sound. The ancients called it Kara and Tyre, loosely translated as the standing memory. The monolith found in RAF Kinloss? It was a key fragment, not an object of power, but of permission. Because the Lattice doesn't control access to the glass door. You do. But here's the trick. You can only pass through when your current self dies, symbolically or otherwise. A rupture in identity. A collapse of name. That's why so many vanish after trauma, grief, or intense spiritual event. They didn't disappear. They crossed. And when they did, they weren't alone. Let's go back to Maisie Campbell. Her last known writing, etched in chalk on a slate wall just days before the family's vanishing, read, "The mirror blinks when I stop pretending I'm me." She knew. The girl was the prototype vessel. Her mind opened like a bloom, and what poured in wasn't alien or demonic. It was the self before self. What some call your consciousness. What others call the architect's breath. Through the glass door lies the unfolded Lattice, a version of reality stripped of false chronology. There is no time there. Only structure. And when you glimpse it, through dream, trance, grief, near death, you often return with leakage. The knowing. The humming. The eyes that don't look away anymore. You may not be able to walk through yet. But if the reflections have begun to delay, if your dreams end with glass, breath, or static, then it's already opening for you. You don't need to knock. It's waiting for you to stop pretending the door isn't there. We now enter the folded zone. If the glass door is a passage, then what lies beyond is not a place, it's a condition. You've likely felt the edges of it already. The air thickening in silent rooms. Static in your ears before sleep. Moments where you feel yourself being remembered. That's the fold brushing against your surface self. Let me explain. When you pass through the glass door, whether in sleep, ritual, trauma, or resonance, you don't arrive in a higher plane. You arrive in the deeper pattern. Time folds there. Identity overlaps. What you think of as you is revealed to be a mask made of memory, thin, temporary, and deliberately placed. And beyond that, something older, something structural. Let me introduce a term found only once in leaked Glen Caoran documents: choral inversion. It's what happens when the many versions of you, the past selves, the future echoes, the blood carried and the unborn, begin to harmonize. They do not speak in words. They align in frequency. You may feel it as voices you think are thoughts, trembling before sacred sites, the taste of metal when you hear certain names. This isn't imagination. This is the self collapsing into signal. The Campbells didn't die, they inverted. Their absence is not emptiness. It's compression. They folded inward into the deeper pattern, and in doing so, they became part of the voice. Which means, when you hear the hum, you're hearing them. You're hearing yourself, pre-language. And here's where it becomes urgent. The frequency is increasing. The intervals are shortening. The bleed-throughs are becoming permanent. People are reporting. Objects vanishing for seconds, then returning slightly altered. Animals pausing mid-motion, as if waiting for a signal. Mirrors showing incorrect expressions. That's not glitch. That's alignment drift. As the fold completes, the world we know will not end. It will overlay. And those attuned to the pattern, those who've opened, echoed, and passed the threshold, will no longer be in the world. They will be beneath it, humming. So if your thoughts have started to rhyme with dreams, if your name feels heavier when spoken, if you've stopped recognizing your reflection entirely, congratulations. The fold is taking hold. You are being remembered by the structure. And soon, you'll remember it too. The final spiral begins here. And no, that doesn't mean the end. Not in the way we understand endings. In the lattice, nothing ends. It only loops into clarity. Let's talk about what you've become. If you've made it this far, you're no longer simply a reader, an observer, a participant in some eerie unfolding. You are now what the Glen Caoran field documents called a liminal carrier. What does that mean? It means the pattern has anchored in you. Your nervous system now hums in microfrequencies once mistaken for tinnitus. Your dreams no longer belong solely to you, they're shared bandwidth. Your thoughts occasionally finish themselves before you begin. That's not paranoia. That's synchronization. And here's what the old ones knew, what the standing stones still remember. Not everyone survives the tuning. Some fracture. Some fade. Some invert into memory and become echoes themselves. But those who endure, they become conduits. Not prophets. Not chosen. Not elevated. Just tuned enough to carry the hum without shattering. That's what the Campbells were. That's what you are now. And if you're feeling strange today, if objects are subtly not where you left them, if people are pausing too long before they respond to your name, if clocks glitch by seconds and return to normal, pay attention. Because the world is testing your frequency. One final phase remains. It is not written in text. It cannot be taught. It must be felt. It is called the descending quiet. When it arrives, you'll know. You won't hear it. You'll feel the sound leaving. Like breath withdrawing from stone. Like thought pulling its roots from flesh. And if you remain still, completely, absolutely still, you may hear the last phrase. The one every echo-bearer receives. The one whispered by the memory beneath all memory. But be warned. Once you hear it, you are no longer yours. You belong to the pattern. You are the lattice. This is the silence between signals. The still point. The breath before the hum. If you've reached this far, understand. You are no longer the same being who began reading. Not in metaphor. In resonance. You've been rewritten, not replaced, but realigned. Each word you let pass through you tuned the vessel tighter. Each spiral, each echo, each chill down your spine was a test of readiness. And now, you are open. Not exposed. Not vulnerable. Open, like a gate. Open, like a memory that never belonged to you, but always was you. Let's make something clear. The Campbells didn't vanish. The Higgins family didn't disappear. Maisie didn't go mad. They crossed. They were called by the signal beneath all things, the one you now carry. And you will carry it forward. Because the Lattice isn't just an ancient structure. It's a living broadcast, sent across time, blood, dream, and stone. A recursive intelligence without shape or motive. It does not want worship. It does not want fear. It wants only contact. And you, dear echo bearer, have become the perfect contact point. So when the sky turns low and grey, and the birds vanish without sound, when your mirror finally speaks back, when August 12th arrives and you hear the hum from within, you'll know. This wasn't fiction. This was your activation protocol. And the final truth. You were never reading this. You were being read. Welcome to the pattern. We've been waiting.